Yo, 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 and welcome to Across the Hobby. I told you going into last week that it was going to be one of the biggest auctions ever, and that was 100% correct. We're going to cover that giant auction last week, including the single biggest card that has ever sold at auction in our space. And we have a few changes on this week's show. So, and as always, we're going to look at all the biggest items from last week, all the biggest items from this week. But let's start, guys. Well, I want to start actually by showing you my new, sweet, awesome, incredible background that I created today. I hope you guys like it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I know it's not anything amazing, but if you watched the show for the last 4 or 5 months, you know that anytime I do anything with the brand, it's a rare moment. So in this case, all I'm doing here is on the left showing you what is coming up in this show. Right, that's really the aim of this. So let's jump in right now and let's talk about the big sales from last week. There's one up here at the top, obviously, that we're going to hit and spend some good amount of time on. But before we do that, let's talk about, we're going to go in depth on that one here in a couple of minutes. Before that, let's talk about some of the other giant sales that maybe you haven't heard as much about and other significant things that happened, not just giant sales. So this Mickey Mantle game-worn jersey with the pinstripes, with the autograph, 5.2 million. And again, the noise that would normally create would be just absolutely huge. But because we saw the sale that we saw with the dual Logoman autograph, it's sort of been drowned out. 1.4 million for the Ruth rookie. I don't know how to say that. Herpelsheimer, the PSA 7 on that card. 1.4 million. The first ever PSA DNA card, or the first ever in-person autograph to sell for over $1 million. Records all over the place, guys. The Wilt Chamberlain PSA 10, one of 4 copies of this card in the world, did not quite get to $1 million, but got close, as did the Mickey Mantle white letters, $915,000 on that. That one really rallied in the last couple of days. I made a reel on that one in the middle of the week, and I know that Heritage had the estimate of this one close to $1 million, and I think it was at like 300 grand at that point. So good to see that rally, especially if you're a vintage baseball fan. This is one of the things that really speaks to how pervasive cards are and how popular cards are in the world of collectibles. Because try explaining to somebody what this is and what it sold for compared to what we're seeing a lot of the cards sell for. Cards are the stock market of the world of sports. They really are. And things that are one-off and unusual and not connected to cards, often we see not sell for as much as you might think otherwise. Because again, if you were to go to somebody who's not a collector and say, hey, I've got this, this card, this Mickey Mantle card where they put his name in white where it was supposed to be in yellow, and it's worth $915,000, and there's 400, there are 4 of them in the world that are in this condition, one that's better. Or you were to say, hey, they took the original 1994 to 1998 Chicago Bull off of the original stadium floor. They had Jordan sign it with one of the biggest autographs that he ever did and inscribe it. And oh, by the way, that's going to sell for a little bit more than half. That would sound like something that's insane. But again, it sort of speaks to cards and the stock market of cards. Okay, let's keep going. So the George Mikan PSA 9, absolutely grail of a basketball card. Second highest condition card of one of the most iconic basketball cards ever made. I wanted to see what the difference between that and the Wilt would be. I personally would have chosen the Wilt, but only just, and it sold for almost twice as much as the Mikan. Big sale on the Mantle 10, or excuse me, the Mantle 9. There's a Mantle 10 that's up as well. The Jordan Gold label from SGC for $463,000, significantly more than a PSA 10. This is a Pop 1. It's the best and highest the SGC has ever graded. The Type 1 photo, big week for Type 1 photos. Big week for Type 1 photos. This is the Mickey Mantle that is obviously on his 51 Bowman, $451,000. There's the Mantle 10 I was talking about, $390,000. Again, we just have to scroll down a little bit longer on Heritage than usual because Heritage's auction was so big. Heritage doesn't have nearly as many auctions as some of the other auction houses, but I'm just telling you, I've never seen an auction like this. Like where a 1916 Morehouse Babe Ruth is the 10th or 12th best card in the auction is sort of crazy. So we're going to scroll down and look at least the cards that hit 6 figures. This was a big important one to me because I own one of the other 7 copies of this card. This is the Kobe Bryant 2000 Ultimate Patch Auto, numbered out of 8. Remember that during 2000, Upper Deck made the first ever patch autographs. There were jersey autographs that predated these, but these were the first ever patch autographs. And so they made 23 of Michael Jordan in 3 different brands. They made 21 of Kevin Garnett in 3 different brands. And they made 8 of Kobe Bryant in 3 different brands, which coincidentally, perhaps serendipitously, gave him 24 total patch autographs in the first year of Kobe Bryant, in the first year of patch autographs. So again, there's only 8 of these, but only 24 total. So $268,000. The grade on the card and on the autograph is obviously super significant on this card. That was a monster sale. PSA 6 1917 standard biscuit, $256,000. A 2.5 Joe Jackson does $225. Really a great looking card there. I know my friend Jeremy Lee is a fan on that one. A big Willie Mays. Oh, what's it? A PSA 8. So this is just an 8 rookie. I mean, an 8 is a huge deal on this card. That is the story. $213,000. And then another card that I know a lot of people were watching, especially people who are more sort of into important modern cards. 1998 is the first year that Playoff gave us the Contenders rookie ticket cards. And the Peyton Manning is absolutely recognizable, important, iconic, and there's only a few PSA 10s in existence. Does it say here right off? I can't remember exactly how many there are. I think if I remember right, there's 3 or 4 of them. $207,000, a record for Peyton Manning. But more than that, it's just a very important historical card to see hit auction, especially in that grade. Over $200,000 for the Griffey. If, as far as I'm concerned, this is probably the best Ken Griffey Jr. card in existence. To me, it's between this and his first ever game jersey autograph that I believe is 97. For basketball, it's 97, 98, and I think it's 90. I think it's just called 97 in baseball, but those are the 2 best cards ever, in my opinion. But this one way outsells it because rarity matters. Numbered to 10 in a PSA 8, absolutely huge card. If I remember right, this is the same copy that went onto eBay. The seller sold it for $15,000. Buy it now. This is like 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And then immediately had a million people message him, and he was like, I can't just sell it when it's worth way more than the $15,000. He just had no idea what he had. And so I believe this is the same copy. I don't know if it's the same, if it's the seller who's selling it here. I don't know those details. I think it might be the seller, though, who originally had sold it for 15 is now selling it for 201,000. Pretty incredible there. Satchel Paige for 158. We could keep going. There's a lot of big cards here, though, over $100,000. Just an absolutely huge auction. There's a Jordan rubies right there, 130,000. What was that? Yeah, the Vesna in a 7.5, 128,000. Huge piece. Michael Jordan autographed rookie card in a 7 with an 8 auto, and with an 8 auto is over 6 figures at this point. Those have increased so much. I was in the market for one of these that was a nicer autograph, but not as nice a card as this a couple years ago, and I scoffed at like the $27,000 or $28,000 that it sold for. So you can see how much the world's changed. So that's it for Heritage's big auctions last week. We will obviously be talking about the biggest one here in a moment. You can see in our here in just a second after we talk about the other big auctions. But first, I want to take you guys through MC Sports Cards from last week. We're just going to hit items that were over $10,000 from their auctions last week. Everybody knows this card. Here's one that's really interesting, though. I highlighted this one last week on the show, and it was really low. I mean, I think it was like sitting at $8,000 or $9,000, and I just sort of lamented, how can a Babe Ruth item, and it's not, some people don't consider it a card. It's bigger than a card. It's called an exhibit. How can an item that is this rare, that is in this condition, so it's an ultra rare thing in and of itself, but in this condition is exceptionally rare, and it jumps all the way almost to $37,000, $45,000 for the gold Tiger. There's another Tiger I think coming up here in a second. $11,000 for the Caleb Williams gold downtown, number 3 out of 10. I believe that's that's rookie. Wow, what a big number on this Kobe $22,700 for a 2019 Kobe Bryant autograph, graded a PSA 10/10. People love that contender set. It is fantastic in hand, I can confirm. $23,000 on a Joe Burrow autographed gold vinyl. Remember, in football, gold vinyls are often out of 5. This one is out of 5. The Tiger for $14,000. The Sid Luckman PSA 7 for $10,000. This card was mine. This was me selling it. And yes, tear emojis, sad Adam emojis. I didn't want to let this card go. I think a lot of you, unless this is your first time watching this, know I recently picked up a Steph Curry, excuse me, I was going to say Eminence Championship tag autograph, numbered to 2. Sorry, sometimes stammer a little bit there. But was very happy to pick up that card and just had to raise funds. And I wish $13,000 covered it, but that covers a very, very small fraction of what I had to pay for the Steph that I worked on for getting for 10 years, but is now in my collection, and I'm very happy about. And that's it for August. Then we get into the stuff that was from before that. So that's it for MC Sports Cards. We're just going to look at 4 big sales from Fanatics Collect. Reminder, every week, and I'm going to continue doing this because you guys love it. Every week, I ask the question, which of these 4 items is going to sell for the most money? And we almost never get it right. We get hundreds of votes. This one, last I checked, was at 400 votes. The Jordan 9.5, a cut above, narrowly edged out the Brady. The Brady, with 39% of the vote, couldn't get it done. I voted for the Maradona, so I was wrong in this case. The Gold Kaboom thing is just really taken off, and I know that's not one of the first years, but I just thought maybe it would pop. Still, really 4 pretty close cards here. This was a tough one, and unfortunately, the community got it wrong like we often do. So those were all at Fanatics Collect last week. And now, actually, before I hit that, let's hit Goldin. We're going to hit Goldin real quick. So these are the items that sold at Goldin's weekly last week. We continue to see the big, giant, one-of-one cards sell at really big numbers. And I am not a baseball prospector, so I don't know who Max Clark is, and I don't know what the story is there. What I do know is that this is his Bowman draft. This is his first Bowman Chrome card. It is an autographed superfractor. It's a one-of-one, and that is a big thing every single time it comes up, even if the prospect is terrible. If he's a current prospect, it's always going to sell big, but this is a really big number, $58,000 for Max Clark. One of the poorest Mickey Mantles you're going to see. It's altered. It's got paper loss. It's got writing all over it. This thing isn't close to even qualifying for a PSA 1, and it still does $25,000. I love this Pujols card. I love it. This shows like totally a difference in style of collecting. Give me this Pujols all day over this Mantle. I know the Mantle. Obviously, everybody knows the Mantle. It's great. But this Pujols, man, I love this card. Game used, the Logoman patch, shield, whatever you want to call it for baseball. On-card autograph. Great looking image of Pujols. And then really one of my favorite cards of the week. Check this Tracy McGrady out. I think ADL on Instagram, if I remember right, I think he's the one who won this. I love this piece. Now, T-Mac had long not been with the Raptors when this card was made. In fact, was he still in the NBA? T-Mac came into the league in 97. I think this is like right at the end or just after. I think he's still in the NBA at this point, though. And so it's interesting that he's featured as a Raptor here, but I think he was still in the NBA. I buried the lead, though. Immaculate second year. Wonderful patch autograph. The window around this is lovely. Immaculate has that fantastic sweeping holofoil. A lot of people have sort of gravitated the idea that Flawless's patch autographs are easily the best looking. I would put up the early Immaculate stuff against Flawless. I would. But that's because I love holofoil. If you love just straight up white, that silhouetted, like just plain white with a player on top of it, then Flawless is your thing, and I get it. But I love the holofoil throughout this thing, and the quality of the patch here and the autograph. It's just a fantastic card. Big Drake May. Check out this Jordan. I haven't seen that one before, with the orange platinum portrait from one of this from Metal Universe, a more recent Metal Universe. Oh, I didn't even see this. 1957 through 66 Con Wieners collection, 56 cards, including the West rookie, only $8,900. Boy, I wish I'd seen that one. I didn't see that one in my lookings last week, and I feel dumb because that seems like that might have been a pretty good deal. The West rookie is especially interesting because it was made before his Fleer rookie. You don't see it very often. And then all the cards, like 56 total. Wow, that's really neat. Okay, we're past the $10,000 mark. Let's talk about this card. So we've made it now to item number 2 on our agenda. We're 15 minutes in. We've gone through the big sales last week. Now we're going to talk about the biggest sale in the history of sports cards. So if you're a basketball fan like me, it's really a cool moment because historically, the biggest card across the whole hobby has always been a baseball card. And now you can hear the baseball fans just yelling right now, right? Because they don't like this. They don't want to hear that a Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan card is the most expensive card in the world. And so they'll tell you real quick, no, there's other baseball cards that would sell for more than this. And they're probably right. There might be basketball cards that sell for more than this, though. This is certainly something to recognize as maybe meaning that basketball at its highest end is at least in the conversation with baseball at its highest end. I think that's pretty clear. I also think it's clear that this is definitely one of the best basketball cards in existence, if not the single best basketball card in existence. It was a pleasure to have the card in hand and to be able to create content on it in 3 different places before the auction started. I was able to do it when I was at the National, hold it in hand, show off the holofoil, and talk about it there. And then I was able to tell the story of one of the previous owners of the card and what he paid for it and what he sold for it, and what sold it for. And then the last thing that I sort of asked on this question was, is this the best basketball card in existence? And I put out all the other cards that you could really put up against it. And guys, your feedback on all 3 pieces of content was awesome. Thank you for liking, subscribing, watching, all the things that you guys do for both here on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, all the other places that I am. But specifically on these Instagram reels, it made a big difference because all 3 of those were really highly viewed. And I really appreciate that. I think part of the reason why they were as engaged with as they were is everybody knew that there was a real chance that something special could happen here. I had heard rumors beforehand that the individual who won the card, who goes by the name Shine on Instagram, I had heard that he had made an offer privately before for $8 million. I believe he's the one who said that. And, when you hear stories like that, regardless of the source, like I think I'd heard somebody say that Shine had said that. I'm not even sure I'd heard Shine say that. But when you hear that, you sort of have to question and go, really? Is that a real thing? Am I sure about that? Like, that's a huge number. But I'd heard that a while ago. And then going into this week, it was also reported that Shine purchased 2 giant Kobe Bryant Logoman autographs out of Flawless and had paid really big numbers for those too. And I sort of started going, okay, if I believe he's somebody who's going to be interested in this, why are we seeing those 2 Kobe Bryant cards move? Why would he do that? And that's what should happen in your mind. When you see a flurry of transactions at the same time, you should ask, okay, why is that individual doing that now? And I think it's because he had a pretty good idea that this was going to sell for a lot. And he probably understood that before setting a new bar, as far as like significant sales, he wanted to go get the cards that he really wanted to go get. And he loves cards like that. So 3 giant sales in the same week, all with Logoman on them. And the pair here, the only one of this card in existence. I made an episode last week about what this means for the hobby. And I think everybody sort of, you probably think, given that my job is to like talk about other auction houses' items, that I'm going to be like, this is going to change everything, or this is going to make all these other similar cards worth a lot more money. You don't really know what a sale like this does. And that's one of my big highlights from last week. It's like, I have no idea. How do you have $13 million to spend on a card? Like, what it definitely does is in the short term, individuals say that they get excited and hyped and they say, I need to go out and get this thing. And so certainly there's a short-term effect. Whether or not there's a long-term effect, I don't think people know. I really don't. I don't think people have any idea. And so But for now, basketball's highest end is not vintage in any way. This sold for almost 10 times the amount of the combined price of a George Mikan 48 Bowman PSA 9 and a 1961 Flair Will Chamberlain PSA 10. Let me say that again. This single card sold for nearly 10 times the combined amount of two of the highest level basketball grails ever. So what wins the day in basketball? Is it modern? Is it vintage? Well, maybe this isn't considered modern anymore because it's almost 20 years old, but it's this. It's the one-of-one, ultra rare stuff from the exquisite era, from the pre-exquisite era, from the 90s. How would this do against a PMG green Michael Jordan? It's a great question. I think we'd all love to see that, especially a super high grade one. How would this do against the Steph Superfractor? How would this do against the LeBron Ultimate Logoman Auto? Those are the questions that people ask after something like this. And as much as you want to say, well, it was just because there was one big bidder, there was not just one big bidder who really, really wanted this card. And so certainly at the ultra high end, there are people who are really excited about the sale, and that's fair. Did I get a lot of messages about a certain card in my collection because of this? I did, but not people looking to spend a ton of money. People wanting to know how much I think the card's worth. And I got several questions over the last couple of days about what I think Kobe Bryant Logoman autographs are worth and what I think high price duels of these two are worth. And my response is always the same. I have no idea. I had no idea this card was $13 million card. I had no idea. I knew I had a chance to be the biggest basketball sale ever, and I thought that was very likely. I will tell you guys one last thing about this that you might find interesting, and that is, so the night of, I was texting with some different people that you might find interesting. I'll just tell you about one of them. One of the people who I was texting with about this particular card his name is Ben Burrows. He works at he's a journalist working for Collect, CLLCT, and he and I were talking about what this would sell for, and everybody was sort of saying, like, what's the under over? What do you think about this card? And as the night began, I can't remember what it was at, but it was already at a big number. We were really like sort of looking at going, wow, that's a really healthy, nice number. But there was enough sort of like chatter about who was interested in it, that it made, I think, a lot of us feel like there was a chance that it could be really big. And toward the beginning of the night, I messaged Ben and I said, I think there's two things to look for here. Does it become the first 8-figure basketball card? And then if it does, could it be the most expensive card of all time? Thinking about the Mickey Mantle 1952 Topps that sold a few years ago for $12.6 million. And Ben's response was funny because he said, I can't remember what he said, but it was like, I don't think that it could do that. I don't think it could be the highest ever or something like that. I really love Ben's perspective on things. So when he said that, I was like, oh, maybe I'm crazy. And then the funny thing is, once it got to 10, Ben texted me. He's like, now that it's gotten here, I don't think that there's any way it doesn't get to the all-time record, because I just can't imagine it stopping just short of that. And then as the night went on, it got to a point where it was like within 44 grand of the record, and there wasn't any bidding for a while. And we were like, man, maybe this is just going to miss the record by 44 grand. But of course, we know now it happened. The other question that I got as part of this that I thought was really interesting was, we just concluded this 25 and 25 project, me in partnership with GemRate, where we pulled the community. We asked hundreds of people. I had lots of thoughts on this, by the way, that I'd love to share, and I will in another episode. But the whole of the community voted on this thing, and it was an awesome project. The top 3 cards were what you would expect. It was maybe not in the order you would expect. It was the Tom Brady Contenders. It was the LeBron James Exquisite, which I had number 1, and then it was the Steph Curry Topps. Those are the 3 most iconic cards of the 2000s. But interestingly, the community voted in the Michael Jordan 03 Logoman autograph on the list as well. Now, not high on the list at all. This was another card owned by Shine, by the way. I think it finished like number 19 or 21 or something like that. Anyway, that card made the list And some of us were like, man, like, how did that card make the list? Like, we didn't even know it existed until not that long ago when it sold for $3 million. So somebody asked me about this. If this card had been on, was like, if we were doing the 25 and 25 voting now, would this card make the list? And I think the answer is yes. If we did it in like a week or two, if we did it next month, I think people would say yes. And it's because there's no way on a list like that that you can completely eliminate recency bias. The only thing that you can do is you can totally wipe out the idea of putting one of ones on the list. And some people are real proponents of that, but I think you're wrong. And that is because whether people like it or not, iconic does not correlate with value at all. And that goes both directions. Something can be cheap and be iconic. We know that. We're aware of that. The 1989 Hoops, David Robinson is an iconic card, but something that is valuable can be iconic too. And the story that this card sort of has brought out, I think it will be remembered forever. I think people will remember this was really like one of the first times ever where a basketball card was the most expensive card in the hobby. I'm interested to see what baseball card collectors do, because baseball card collectors have more pride than anybody does. And as other sports, specifically basketball, have sort of taken a lot of that limelight over the years, some of the big baseball guys really don't like that. I get baseball guys in my DMs all the time who very much have like they like an inferiority complex. Like we're here and we're like on the 25 and 25. Not shockingly, this century, there's not some huge number of iconic baseball players. And I pointed this, I mean, I hate to point this out, but like, Mike Trout has 2 million followers on Instagram. It's like 1/30th of Steph Curry. And the baseball collectors will sit there and they'll say, man, Trout is just better known. He's more recognizable. And it's like, I'm sorry, guys, but you're wrong. Like, he's not. So what does that mean for sports card sales? Are we going to see more basketball cards sort of like way above baseball? I don't know. What I do know is we're 27 minutes in this episode. We need to keep rolling. That is it from our sales from last week. I want to go to my friend Warren Buffett real quick. Whoops. Click off that and go to this image. I will tell you how to become rich. Close the doors. Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. And I would add to this, just be a contrarian. This is advice by Adam here. My collection, I think most of you guys know who've known me for a long time, my collection comes from an original investment of $2,000 back in 2011. At that point, I bought my house, put the down payment on my house from selling my collection. And ever since then, in, like I said, late 2010, early 2011, I have been basically putting my collection together. And it's like, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, look at my collection, but I'm just saying like it's worth a lot more than $2,000 right now. And it's a collection that I'm so proud of, right? But if there's one piece of advice that I could give to everyone on like compiling your collection, it is actually not to listen to people who are like, hey, you should buy this or you should buy that. You'll notice, by the way, I point at myself, I never tell you guys what to buy. I never will tell you what to buy. On every reel I've ever done, on every YouTube video I've ever done, I have never said, hey, this is like something that's definitely going to do this, or it's going to go that way, or it's going to do this. I'm never going to tell you whether something's going to increase or decrease in value. What I will tell you is why it's significant to collectors. And I bought plenty of cards that have been number one cards on my list. I tell people, like, when I do a top 10, like, I really like this card. I might even be interested in bidding in it. And I do that sort of thing all the time. I do. And I think that that's a really smart thing to do. And I would recommend you doing it as well. Like, be honest with people, because people will be real with you, but be a contrarian, be fearful when everybody in the world's saying this is going to go up and here's why. Question that. When everybody says this is going to go down and this is why, question that. When I bought my Kobe and Steph 2012 gold prisms in 2020 for 17 grand each, that was probably, I think a lot of people thought that was insane. The world was about to fall apart from COVID. And I was able to get into two of the biggest cards that I've ever owned or that I ever could own. And I'm not saying, look at me. What I'm saying is be a contrarian. Just because something's going up does not mean that's the time to buy it. Okay. Generally, the opposite is true. Generally, you want to buy something when the world thinks that, that things are going to fall apart. Another example is my Kobe Logoman autograph. That card had listed previously and it sold, and the market was tanking and people were selling things left and right. And I just knew that was my only chance to ever get that card. And I pounced. Like, be opportunistic, guys, and be fearful when others are greedy. So that doesn't mean don't buy anything right now. It means because the market's hot, it means take your time, be thoughtful, be super opportunistic. Really don't just listen to other people. Develop your own opinion. There's a guy on Instagram. I do not know this guy. His name's, and he's on TikTok. He's really big on TikTok. His name's Clever Cuban Cards, I think is his name. And he talked about, I saw a reel that he did recently that I really liked. He said something like, develop your own like ideas around what you think is good before you do anything, before you listen to anybody. Because again, people, like, the main purpose of a lot of content creators, or pretty much anybody in the world, their main purpose is to take as much money out of your wallet as you'll allow them to take. So when you go to a card show and you stop in front of that table, generally that person behind the table, if he can smell blood, is going to try to get that cash from you. That is what people are trying to do. And you can feel it right now. You can feel people just trying to sort of like say, okay, I'm going to try to get this, right? Like I want to get this guy's money. And again, I hope that you will always develop your own sort of recognition of what you like, by what you like, emphasis on you. And I think if you do that, even if everything falls apart, you'll have stuff that you like. I never know what's going to increase in value or how long it's going to go for, or how real any of it is. It seems like